Hi, we are recording our first session of our IP Inclusive podcast, and this is for the celebration of the 10-year anniversary of IP Inclusive. My name is Jodie Bates, and I work at Boult Wade Tennant as the IT trainer, so from the business support side. I will be co-hosting this podcast with Max Walters.
Hello, hi Jodie. Thank you. It's great to be here. So yeah, I'm Max Walters. I'm editor of Managing IP. Many of you readers might be aware of us, some of you won't be, but we essentially cover intellectual property news and developments worldwide. But we have over the last 10 years, and certainly since I've joined the business, we've worked quite closely with IP Inclusive to shine a spotlight where we can on diversity and DEI topics within the IP profession. Yeah, and it's great to be here. So today we're going to be talking about the mission of IP Inclusive, how it was formed, have a look back maybe over the last 10 years, and potentially look ahead as well. I'm pleased to say we're joined by Andrea Brewster, who's lead executive officer of IP Inclusive. Hi, Andrea.
Hello, Max. Nice to be here.
Hi, good to see you. And Anne Burgato, who is a member of the executive team at IP Inclusive.
Hi, Max. Nice to see you.
Hi, and good to see you too. And we also have Jane Wainwright with us, who is involved in the IPause committee at IP Inclusive, and has also been a patent attorney, a long-standing patent attorney. Hi, Jane. Good to see you.
Hey, Max.
Right. Well, Jodie, where should we kick off? What do you reckon we should? How should we start this? I suppose maybe it would be a good point to look back 10 years ago and consider why IP Inclusive was started and how it came about. Andrea, maybe you're best placed to sort of kick off on that.
I suppose I ought to. It's really difficult to say how and why because IP Inclusive sort of grew so organically and so randomly, really, from the start that there was never any grand plan. Let's set up an IP Inclusive. It began, I guess, with a sort of roundtable meeting that I organised when I was vice president of SEPA. And we got lots of people together from across the IP professions, and we just asked, do we think there's a problem with diversity in IP? And if so, do we want to try and tackle it together, and how might we do that? And it just struck a nerve. It just came at the right time, I think, because I was just gobsmacked at the response. Lots of people turned up. Lots of people said, yes, there's a problem. Yes, we want to try and solve it. And it just all grew really, really quickly from there. But as I say, randomly, it was just driven by the people that were there and the people that got involved. Everyone threw in ideas. The ones that stuck turned into something really quite special. And it all happened much quicker than I was expecting. But it came out of that first meeting, and that's sort of that key question: do we think there's a problem? And if so, can we work together? And there was just a tremendous appetite for doing that.
Why do you think it wasn't raised before? Do you think? Because 10 years ago, in the sense of how long SEPA's been around for, is a relatively short time ago. I feel like diversity has been a topic of conversation for possibly it has grown a lot in the last 10 years. You're probably right, but yeah, why do you think nobody thought to raise this previously?
I think you have to put yourself in a position 10 years back. It really, people weren't talking about diversity as much back then.
Sure.
Certainly not in our profession. We were slower to come to it than many others. If people thought about diversity at all, it was primarily what are we doing about women? Occasionally, you might think about bringing in people from minority ethnic backgrounds, but primarily it was women, and we didn't think about it that much because, for heaven's sake, we allowed women into the patent profession. What was the problem? People just didn't realise there was a problem, I think, back then. But when a group of people came together and there was stuff going on outside the profession as well, which was starting to shine a light on diversity, suddenly it became apparent that actually it had been on people's minds. They were just looking for a way to focus what was on their minds and what they were going to do about it. And IP Inclusive was just a kind of catalyst for that.
Excellent. Yeah.
I'd be quite interested actually to know. I mean, Anne came into IP Inclusive a few years ago. So probably, Anne, you've seen it sort of develop even further since those early days.
Yeah, I mean, coming into it, I was amazed at what you were doing and kind of the level of cross-firm cooperation and sharing of ideas is gobsmacking, really, from my experience. And yeah, it was definitely something very special going on.
How did you come to get involved, Dan? What sort of led you to join IP Inclusive? And
I had a friend who is a patent attorney who got the newsletter that with the advert for a role. It was just at the point where my youngest son was about to start school, and so I was looking for a part-time working from home role, and it was absolutely perfect. So I applied, and the rest is history.
yeah, excellent. Jane, I don't know if you've got any sort of thoughts on how things have developed over the 10 years. If you look back to 10 years ago where you were, was there a sort of crying need for something like this to come about?
Yes, I think 10 years ago it was people perhaps didn't necessarily realize there was a need. There were those that really were into diversity, and it mattered in a large part because they were part of a group that was a minority. But I think more broadly within the profession, it wasn't so noticeable as to what was needed. And I think over that 10-year period, IP Inclusive has really come into its own. It's grown, and it's become really well established within the profession. And the vast majority of people in the profession in the UK at least know it exists, even if they don't necessarily engage with it. They know that it exists and
Yeah.
don't object to it existing. So it's that is a really, really helpful thing. But I think something that Anne said about the cross-firm kind of collaboration on this, it is unusual. But actually, I think from the perspective of who patent and trademark attorneys are and the types of people they tend to be, it's not massively surprising that they collaborate, because actually they tend to come from slightly different backgrounds to other professional service firms. And I don't know, I'm biased. We tend to be patent attorneys, trademark attorneys tend to be quite nice, I think.
Yeah. No, I've always found that as an outsider that they're very sort of avuncular, if I can say that. I don't know. That's usually a word used to describe someone older, isn't it? Talking to someone younger, but very, very accepting of people who may not sort of necessarily come into something with the understanding or with the knowledge. I've always found them to be a very friendly community. So I think that's definitely rings true. I think we'll come on shortly into how it's developed over the last 10 years. But Jodie, did you have any sort of thoughts? I mean, how did you get involved with IP Inclusive, and how have you seen it change?
I started with IP Inclusive, I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago. At Boult, we had a talk from a company called Sutton Trust, who help young people get into the profession from an underprivileged background. And it really struck home with me. I grew up on a council estate. We didn't have a lot of money. And I personally felt that I was quite undereducated, and I didn't have a lot of opportunities that other people generally do have, purely because of the upbringing that I just generally had. So I got more involved in that. And then one of the partners who is involved in Women in IP mentioned there was openings for volunteering roles. And I was like, oh, well, I'm a support member of staff. It doesn't apply to me. And I thought, do you know what? Actually, no, I'm going to go for it. And I did. And I've been on the board ever since. And I love everything that I do. I've been asked to do talks at CPRO and STIPMA. Some of the partners have asked me to do stuff. And I feel really privileged to be asked to do this, and that my voice and my contribution is valued. And that's how I got into it. And it has changed a lot. And I feel comfortable to say things like, if we feel like we're missing certain areas. So me and Andrea have spoken quite a bit that, yes, we're making leaps and bounds in other areas, but there's still room for improvement in other areas, and it's all taken on board, and I'm not judged for what I say, and I'm listened to, and I actually quite appreciate that. So that's how I got involved, and that's why I'm still involved, and I love what I do for IP Inclusive.
I think if I can just pick up on one
it.
of the points that Jodie made there, and hopefully Jane will agree as well, that one of the key things about IP Inclusive's development has been that it's been driven by the volunteers that are involved. So if they've got ideas and they want to run with them, that's absolutely fine. There isn't this grand plan being imposed from above. It's what do people want to do? Are they willing to get involved and do it? So, okay, we'll support it. Let's make it happen. And it's been very much like that, so that everything that happens has had an awful lot of engagement from everybody because the ideas are coming from those people.
And not just that the ideas are coming from the people that are volunteers and are running it. Actually, they're coming from the users. So people are saying what it is that they want, and then the volunteers can kind of take those ideas and make them run. And a lot of IP Inclusive isn't just about the kind of doing stuff. Some of it's just about community, literally about having people that are like-minded and going through the same kinds of experiences or want to understand the experiences. So community is hugely important.
Where do you feel, I suppose it's hard to say what the biggest change has been, but in terms of from when you started to where you are now, maybe in terms of the amount of committees that are now involved in IP Inclusive, how's that developed over the time, because you talk about how it's community driven. I mean, maybe you can give a sense of how many committees you've gone from when you started to where you're at now, and there's sort of new committees opening all the time, aren't there, and new network opportunities. Andrea, maybe if you start us off with that, and then.
Yes, I mean, right from the beginning, we had an idea that there would be certain key areas, and I don't think they've changed much. We knew we were going to do something on the outreach side to diversify the pipeline of recruits. So Careers in Ideas was there right from the beginning. It's grown, but it's always been there. We knew we wanted some networking and support communities for specific underrepresented groups. We started out maybe with women in IP and the beginnings of IP Out for the LGBTQ plus community. Those have grown. We've got 6 now. We've had some that have started but decided in the end to wind up. We've had IPause, which came along relatively recently because there was a need for it. We were potentially going to start one for men in IP. Again, that's sort of in gestation. So we've seen changes in the number and nature of those communities as demand has changed. We always knew we wanted a charter scheme. That was another one of the key tenets of our work. And that's it's still there, but it's grown. It's also developed an associated senior leaders pledge, which has got increased traction. So it's more of the same, really. And I'm quite proud of the fact that right from the very beginning, we got the right cornerstones in place. And they're just sort of growing in diversity and number. But I mean, Anne, you've probably seen the most growth just in the last few years because it's kicked off big time with you and Helen joining and us having more capacity. So, yeah, what have you seen change?
I mean, yeah, we've seen the arrival of IPause, and as you say, we're looking at new communities for men in IP and also support professionals. We're hoping to get those off the ground during our next 2-year business plan. I guess there's been a lot of change around the regional networks. When I started in 2022, I think there were officially Scotland, the South West, the North of England, and the Midlands network. And I think now the North of England and the Midlands have kind of wound up, while Scotland are still going really strong. They have a lot of really popular events going on. There's a strong community up there. And the South West, they've been doing more in the last few years, haven't they? But again, it's just about the demand, and there just hasn't been the demand for the events that the Midlands and the North of England networks were putting on. But
equally, we can do a lot more online.
Yeah. We would support anyone who wanted to start up something again or start something in Wales or the east of England or wherever they want to go. And we also, you mentioned the Senior Leaders Pledge. We've also, in the last year, developed a specific in-house Senior Leaders Pledge in partnership with IP Federation. So, yeah, we just kind of see where the demand is and follow it, really.
Interesting. Well, if you reveal, I don't know if you can, reveal in advance, or with something you mentioned, it was just in the gestation period for the men in IP. But where's the demand come from that? What are you seeing in terms of I don't know, maybe the support or the community that men in IP are sort of after?
We've done a lot of work with Jonathan's Voice. We regularly run
Of
webinars
course,
with
yeah,
them,
yeah,
and whilst the webinars are often generally with regard to mental health, they do a lot of specific stuff around men's mental health,
mm,
and those joint webinars are very, very popular. And then one of our supporters, Richard Wells, has been very active organising some great events about men's mental health. And yeah, there's kind of growing demand there. We have been waiting for it to reach a point where we felt that it was ready to become a network.
We've also had a lot of support for that from the advisory board, actually. You know about this, Jodie, don't you? That it's one of the things that the advisory board are saying to us is that you need to put some work into this area. This is where we have sort of detected there's a gap that needs filling. And I spoke to our women in IP community not long ago about this as well. And there's a lot of support there amongst the women in IP for providing something for other genders. You know, we don't want to be exclusive. We want for everybody to have a space where their particular issues can be talked about safely.
Yeah, I think when we've spoken about it in the past, is I've done a lot for men's mental health charity personally at home with like Christmas decorations and fundraising for men's mental health charities. And the hard thing with that, I personally think, is the biggest trailblazers, campaigners for men's mental health is women. They're the ones that rave and shout about it, especially in my local area. So it's a hard one to try and do. I think it's definitely needed. It's just how you're gonna have to tackle it. The blueprint you use for women in IP, you can't copy and paste that over to the men's side of it. So it's better to do something and try and go, well, do you know what, that didn't work. Let's try something else and mix it up a bit, and just try different things, and obviously getting other points of views. And I think it's got to the point now where people are a lot more comfortable. It's not great, but a lot more comfortable with talking about men's mental health. And yeah, I think it's just a work in progress at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's really interesting what you're saying about how the biggest advocates of men's mental health are women, because as the only man, I suppose, on this panel, I can probably identify with that. We're not known for kind of putting our emotions out there very often, or speaking about emotions. But yeah, that's very it's eye-opening to sort of hear that.
And I think it's really important to remember as well that these communities are inclusive. Women in IP is not just for women; it's for women and their allies. And I mean, for example, IPause, a lot of it is about how you can support people who are struggling through menopause. So anybody could attend those sessions, and that would be the idea of a men's network as well. So with the women being the biggest advocates, it will be for women and men, but focusing on that issue.
And that's good for for businesses as a whole, isn't it? When you have a community that seeks to support a certain sector, but also people from outside that sector, you want to think, well, actually, I want to know how I can approach this and make it a more comfortable place for, people to work and people to operate and people to feel, to feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the nice things that Richard is kind of the champion and driving it forward. And I know him quite well, and he wouldn't want to be taking credit for it, but actually it's the fact that it is him pushing, and the fact that he is a man does help, and it will help at the point that gets set up, to know that it isn't just the women kind of foisting it upon the men, telling them what's good for them, because I suspect that's some of the problem and some of the resistance right now.
We spoke a little bit earlier about collaboration and firms collaborating with each other. I'm looking in terms of like other jurisdictions. Do you feel much appetite, or is there other organisations like IP Inclusive elsewhere, around the world or in Europe? I'm just trying to get a sense of the appetite for setting something up like this? Because there must be, I suppose, if you look at individual countries, they'll face the same problems, not problems exactly, but the same concerns and the same topics. People who might feel marginalized, people might want a supportive community. Is there anything like IP inclusive elsewhere in Europe that you know of? I don't know, Andrea or Anne, if you're best placed to sort of kick off with that, or
I'll kick off with that if it's all right, Anne. Because it's a really interesting question. No, I don't think there is anything elsewhere that runs along quite this model. We were contacted a few years back by the CIPA's counterpart in Australia and New Zealand, who look after patent and trademark attorneys there, saying, is this a model that we could try and roll out in our countries? And we gave them a little bit of help and support over that. I don't know if it's actually come to setting up an independent body, though, like IP Inclusive.
Interesting.
Some European countries have sort of expressed interest, but I think for many of them, actually, the diversity scene is not the same as it is in the UK. I think in many ways our culture is a little bit further ahead on diversity and inclusion. And there are certain aspects of the IP inclusive model. I do wonder whether they are unique to the UK, because we rely so much on volunteers and, that spirit of generosity and collaboration. And it's kind of everyone chips in. It's make, do and mend. It's the Parent Teachers Association. I'm not sure that many other countries have quite the same ethos. So that sort of we're all in it together type of culture might not translate into other countries. I don't know. But at the moment, what we have is sort of the lovely combination of sector specific, IP specific, but also within that sector and professional. Everyone who works with IP can get involved. I think that's unique, and I haven't seen anything like that in other countries, not across the entire diversity space like we do.
Interesting. Yeah. Anne or Jane or Jodie, have you got any thoughts on anything that you've seen from elsewhere, or what Andrea was saying also about the UK's framework being slightly further ahead? Correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of its conversation, its recognition of something that something should be done to support diverse communities.
I think that's a really interesting thought about it, that it's our kind of that make, do and mend attitude. I haven't seen anything else in any other countries. We occasionally get contacted on LinkedIn by people wanting to get involved from other countries, but perhaps because there isn't anything there. Yeah, no.
One other thing is that, America was, up until maybe this year, they were quite far ahead on diversity. But I don't think there was anybody doing what IP Inclusive did, which is to say, we're here for all the diversity strands, recognizing that intersectional point. Everybody's welcome here. Everyone can be here, whether a member of an underrepresented group or as an ally. And we're not limiting ourselves to the gender debate or to the ethnicity debate or to social mobility. We're all of those things, because they all play into someone's experience of feeling included at work.
Yeah. I've come across AIPLA does have a kind of a diversity group and committee, but it still doesn't work in the same way as IP Inclusive does. And I know that they very actively look at what IP Inclusive is doing, because I know they were looking at what we were doing with IPause in relation to menopause, and they've started a menopause kind of support and education group.
Okay.
So we're definitely being looked at and to some extent modelled, but it is that make, do and mend, and everybody gets
trailblazers and
perhaps we're all just showing our age, and it's the Dunkirk spirit and.
But no, the next generation are embracing that. And that's lovely to see through our IP Futures community, which is for the early career people. They're just as keen to get involved.
I mean, that's a whole other topic of conversation, possibly. But I mean, what kind of experiences have you had, or if you found challenges with sort of welcoming in Gen Z? Is that what we call them now? The sort of the next generation down from us, who sometimes it's hard to sort of think on their wavelength, isn't it? Because there's all sorts of things going on there that you maybe not so up to speed with, and it's interesting, kind of the integration in the profession now between Gen Zers and our generation and the other generations above that. I don't know if that's
In
something
some ways, they've been our guiding lights because they're the ones that care more about this stuff. And that in itself creates a business case, because if the people above them in businesses don't take note of that, they're going to start losing people. They won't be able to recruit or retain the talented folk that they need. I don't know what the generation after them will do, and it's possible that there will be another change again. But what's great about IP Inclusive is it allows conversations between all these groups, so we do all learn from each other.
What is the generation after Gen Z, Jodie? Is it Alpha? Does it start again? I'm not sure. I can't remember what it's.
I do not know, because I don't know what part of generation I'm in.
No, I don't know.
I think it's A. I think it is Gen A.
Is it Gen A? Is it starting again? Is it? It goes round again. Yeah. Interesting. Well, yeah. I mean, that's all really interesting stuff. I suppose is it sort of worth looking to the future? I mean, I guess from what you've said, it's not really something that can predict, because it's just based on sort of current demand and how the conversation goes, and where you look to go to next. But where would you want to see IP Inclusive in another 5 to 10 years? Maybe Anne or Andrea, if you wanted to have a thought on that.
I mean,
I'll make a start. Where do I want to see us? Still here, still going strong. And I think with what's happening outside, that's an important goal to have. Community is, I mean, Anne, if you want to talk about the business plan for the next 2 years, community is going to be key, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's our focus. We've at the advisory board suggestion, we've moved to a 2-year business plan. We've just finished up our last 2 years was looking at allyship, and of course that's important across all that we do. And now we are moving on to community. So from 25 to 27, we're going to be looking at community. As I said, looking at maybe setting up some new communities, getting some feedback about what people want, and just more of the same. In terms of IP Inclusive itself, our goals, we are hoping to update the website. If we can get some funding for that. It's been, well, I don't know when you set it up, Andrea, but potentially up to 10 years old now, and it would be nice to get that looking a bit more up to date. We'll
get it up to speed with the Gen Zers and the Gen A again.
We were very lucky to get some funding from Heseltine Lake Kempner a couple of years ago, when we updated the careers and ideas. And we're also, we haven't mentioned yet, Summer of IP, our outreach arm, Careers and Ideas, started running Summer of IP in 23 and 24. But they were great. They were massively popular. Lots of opportunities for people to get involved and find out what careers in intellectual property could involve. But it was a lot of work. There's only 3 of us here at HQ, and we're all part-time. So we decided to move that to a biannual project. So there wasn't one in 2025, but we're looking forward to growing that Summer of IP in 2026. And just keep on moving forwards, I think.
Absolutely. And I guess that notion of careers and ideas, Jodie, it sort of ties in with what you were saying at the start of the call about how you didn't necessarily think that working at a patent and trademark attorney firm would be something that would be an option. But the sort of the options in the IP community are sort of endless in a way, I suppose.
Yeah, because before I started working at Boult and working for an IP firm, I worked for a corporate company, but before that I was working for an apprenticeship company, training IT, English and maths at GCSE level for people to get IT apprenticeships. And I remember the students used to come up to me and say, well, I'm not smart, I can't do this. And they would say they had a learning need. And I'm dyslexic, and I'm very open about that. And I say, well, do you think I'm smart? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I'm dyslexic. And they're like, what? And I'm like, if I can do it, you can do it. It's obviously people being inclusive and acceptive, and talking about the generations as well from a training standpoint. When I've done onboarding and rolling out new systems, the younger generation that are coming through as the trainees have a greater understanding of what works for them and what doesn't from a training standpoint. And obviously it's to do with their education as they're coming through school, college and university, of them understanding what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and actually being comfortable to vocalize that in a workplace setting, to say, oh, look, I like this. Some of them sit there with their headphones on because they don't like the noise in the office, and we're okay with that. And it's nice that people feel comfortable enough to say that in the workplace. Because sometimes with first time employment, it can be very daunting.
Sure, yeah, that's interesting.
I think actually Jodie's a great example of why IP inclusive works, because she has come from a different background to a lot of other people. When you think about the attorneys, and being heavily involved in IP inclusive from a support team role, it demonstrates that IP inclusive is for everybody.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The volunteers come from across the profession, and that it is for everybody across the profession.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a nice line to think about. And did you have any other questions, Jodie, about the mission of IP inclusive, or if you're looking back over the last sort of few years and looking ahead, or?
No, I know me and Andrea got some more stuff in the pipeline moving forward, which I'm really excited to kind of get started. But no other questions
around men in IP, is that?
I've been talking to Ben about men in IP, but no, the stuff I've been working with Andrea is kind of been trying to get more business support staff involved. And I think it's not the firms need to change what they're doing, saying that they're doing anything wrong. I think it's mindset from the actual business support staff, them thinking, well, that's not for me. There's no pivotal thing that happened. There's nothing like a conversation or a comment that's ever been said to me where I think I can pinpoint it to that point where I don't feel included. It's just an impression that I had, and it's not just from IP, just in general, that I'm a support member of staff. That's not for me, and I don't know where I've got it from, but it's my issue, and my mindset needs to change. So I want to do some more stuff with Andrea of changing mindset with support staff to say, look, you are included. Come and join us. We'll welcome you with open arms.
Can I jump in there and say I don't think it's just your mindset. I think it is a widespread mindset. And I was the active allyship event recently, chatting to some support staff who had come along, and they were saying exactly the same thing. They weren't kind of aware that this was for them too. And what it took was one of the patent attorneys saying, "I'm going to an event. Come with me." And absolutely perfect example of allyship, and just making it really clear that it was for them, and it was great, and they had such a lovely time and really enjoyed it. So I told them to tell all their friends. But yeah, it's not just you, and it's something that we have to find a way of spreading that message that it is for everyone, and bring a friend.
Yeah,
and that's how we build the community that we're going to be working so hard on in the next few years, because with everything going on in the outside world, that's going to be the most important part of our work. And it's been the thing that's made us successful so far. It's the thing that people value about us the most, is this terrific, all-inclusive community.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, from our point of view as well on managing IP, we'll do what we can as well to continue contributing to the conversation and shining a spotlight on it where we can. Excellent. I think that's a good place to sort of leave the first podcast, unless anyone else has anything they wanted to sort of add as a final thought. But I thought that was a nice line from Andrea, sort of looking ahead at what's to come and the good things that have been achieved so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to everyone. Thanks to Jane, to Anne, and to Andrea. And thanks for helping me out, Jodie, and leading the conversation with me.